All right, continuing on with my barrage of older unboxings. I haven't done any unboxings in a while since I kind of returned to it with Great War in Europe Deluxe, and then I've done the Gettysburg game, and now this, which is Avalon Hill's Source of the Nile. So Callendale did a playthrough of this, a week, 2 weeks ago, maybe now, or thereabouts, and kind of reminded me that this is it was an Avalon Hill game that I had never actually acquired for various reasons, but actually watching his playthrough of it got me interested in it enough to want to grab a copy finally, just to add to my collection of Avalon Hill stuff. And I'm actually curious to play it as well. Just the playthrough was interesting enough to me, even though, Callendale said that solo, it's not the greatest, although he enjoyed it more as he played. But I wouldn't mind trying to play this with either my local game group or at our annual guild, Board Game Geek Guild convention, to see if some people are up for some retro gaming with Source of the Nile. But this is a kind of classic Avalon Hill title, not hard to find. I just picked an unpunched copy up on eBay for like $40 or something, which is probably at the higher end. You could certainly find punched copies for probably as little as $10 to $15 maybe. And it just depends on what state the box is in. I tend to want boxes that are in good shape, and I want all the components there. One of the key components for this particular game is the crayons, and so I wanted the actual crayons that came with the game. I wanted those, and so these are the actual wipe-off crayons. I don't know if just any old crayons would do, or if you need to use these, but these are what came with the game. They're the right colors for what the publisher intended, so that's why I made sure to get a copy that had the crayons with it. And then your classic ultra cheap Avalon Hill dice rulebook. And the copy that I had, I've gone through this box and sorted the components and stuff, and then cleaned them as well. This was covered with dust. I'm not sure if it's like kind of dust from the crayons that were in the box, or wherever it was stored, a bunch of dust got in there, but it was just filled. I mean, I took a like a damp microfiber cloth, and literally wiped everything down, except the rules. I used a dry cloth to wipe the rules down, but yeah, the damp cloth, when I wiped down like the map and the counters and stuff, just came off just filthy, like brown, and so whatever this was, it was coated with dust. Otherwise in good condition, but just kind of dirty from however it was stored over the years. But here's the rules. They are 3 columns, so they remind me of SPI rules, is what I think of when I see the 3-column rules. But very tiny font, but not very long, since the font's so small. So 16 pages of rules for Source of the Nile. Counters are the classic Avalon Hill type counter sheet with the little fold over, like the ultra wide with a little fold over, and not a lot of information on these, obviously, but I think you're not just using these counters with the words on them. I think you're actually also using the blank counters as well for gameplay, if I'm recalling Callendale's playthrough correctly, where you're essentially marking all the hexes that your expedition has hit. So standard Avalon Hill counters, they're sort of like semi-glossy on one side and then matte blank on the other. And questionable die cutting, which was typical of the era. This game in particular, what year was this? 1980 something. It doesn't say on the book. I'm just looking to see on the back of the book. No, 1979, so not even 80s, we're talking 70s. Yeah, so 70s era die cutting on that. And then these are all the cards. They are unpunched. For these old Avalon Hill cards like this, I will cut them out. I've got a little, this rotary cutter tool that I'll use to cut these out so you don't have the tufts of the perforations along all the sides. You'll have a nice smooth edged set of cards, and these are just typical fairly thin cardstock, not super heavy, but they're functional and get the job done. I just don't like the perforated tufts along them. So another reason why I like getting an unpunched copy of these older games that have the cards that you're supposed to punch out, and they're in these big sheets like this, just because I don't want all the little, if people have done them, if it's a punched copy, it's almost always they've just torn these out and they're all tufted, and so you'd have to go through and cut them anyway to cuddle it, to run the blade along the edge of them to get the tufts off anyway. So might as well do it where I can cut them out myself and make it as clean as possible. You've got the game log here, your sheet that's got all of your record sheets on it, and then of course once you've used them all at the end, you can fill out this form and send it in, mail it into Avalon Hill to reorder your Source of the Nile log pad once you've used all of them up. I'm sure they will fulfill that order as quickly as they possibly can. And then the map is classic Avalon Hill mounted board with the textured faux leather backing on it. Got your classic reply card you can send in, and then order form to order other games from Avalon Hill. So you want to send that in. So this is a 3-piece map, which was, again, this is pretty common for the era before they did the bigger folded boards. That was in the later games in the 70s. They were going to be more like this, basically a 3-color mounted board with just microscopic charts and tables and text and stuff on it. But this is a pretty good map for this era. There is some color, also some difference in color, and I don't think this is like sun fading or anything because none of the other colors are faded. I think it's literally just a production issue on here where this part of the brown along the coasts is not as vivid as the brown is along here. And then some of the mountains are kind of faded on here. So I think it was literally the brown started strong and then got weaker as it printed across or whatever, because the blues and everything all match exactly. It's just the browns have this very distinct difference. And maybe because this center board, this is the only brown on here, because the brown on this bottom board, still doesn't quite match, but is definitely closer in color than it is to this here. So that's it was interesting. So definitely, also the danger of doing 3 boards, I guess. Although you'd think they would print like the full map sheet out, and then it would be cut to be mounted accordingly. It's not like they were printing, they're printing 3 different sections of this paper map itself before mounting it. I think they're printing it all together and then probably cutting it, but who knows? I don't know. But definitely it seems more like a production issue and not like a storage, sat out in the sun and faded issue, because again, the blues are consistent. The blues would also be faded if this were sun fading or something. So some sort of weird production issue. But regardless, this is the map you'll be writing on with your crayons to add your terrain and stuff as you explore your way along. So that was, again, what's interesting to me is the exploration. This was one of the earliest sort of exploration games that you could get, and classic box back here, where this is interesting because there's not even a picture of like the components or anything on here. It's just, in fact, this is interesting. It is just all the picture on the back is just a smaller picture of the cover art. So that's interesting. I need to look at some of my other old Avalon Hill titles from the 70s and see if they just did the same thing. If they just had the cover art just replicated in the back of the box. And so usually this insert picture would be a shot of the components of the game. Maybe they didn't have that ready or something, but just dense with text. I mean, these older games would have just dense text on the back. I guess people were bigger into reading back then than they are today. Anyway, that's just a quick look at the components of Source of the Nile. It was influenced by Callendale's recent playthrough, so I picked up a copy, and I look forward to eventually playing this one and see how it turns out.